The greatest 3 weeks in all of sports are finally here. It's March Madness. These next 3 weeks, we're going to experience so many different emotions. Right now, we're excited because the tournament is getting ready to begin. We're filling out our brackets. We're trying to pick which team is going to be the Cinderella team this year. We're entering bracket groups. We're filling out multiple brackets depending on if you're a person that fills out one bracket with a bracket of integrity and enters it in all 7 of your bracket groups, or if you're going to be like me, who enters in a different bracket for every group that they're going to join, because so many different things could happen. Basically, just covering your bases so you win one group. I know it may not be the most fun thing to do, but it's fun to just win. But this is my official bracket for the YouTube channel for Johnny Talk Sports. And this is the bracket that I'm going to use to enter in the Johnny Talk Sports bracket group. That's right, we're doing the Johnny Talk Sports March Madness Bash again this year. And to join the group, I'm going to put the link to the group in the description box down below. It requires to have an ESPN account because this is the ESPN Tournament Challenge. If you don't have an ESPN account, it just takes 2 minutes to create an account, and then after that, you can fill out your bracket and enter in the group. Last year, I think we had about 30 people in there. Let's see if we can get a little bit more than that this year. So before I get to the games and the whole bracket, there's a couple teams that I thought got snubbed out of a spot in the tournament. The 2 teams I think got snubbed the most were Oklahoma State and USC. But we had teams like Syracuse and Oklahoma in there. If you want my opinion, I would swap out Syracuse and Oklahoma and put in Oklahoma State and USC. Because Oklahoma only got in because of Trae Young. And I find this strange how the committee set up the Midwest bracket. Because if you look at the teams that are in the Midwest bracket, especially if Oklahoma goes on a magical run, think of the teams they could end up playing if they end up making a magic run to the Final Four, which I think it's not going to happen. But look at the teams that are in the Midwest bracket: Duke, Michigan State, Kansas. Those would be teams that Oklahoma would face if they want to make a magical run to the Final Four. I mean, anything can happen in March, but this is one thing that I don't think is going to happen. Considering Oklahoma, I feel like they shouldn't have gotten in. But if they did want to put him in, they should have at least had him be one of those last 4 in. Because Oklahoma had a bad end of the season. Yes, they had a couple good quality wins, but how they ended the season, they didn't even look like a tournament team at all. And I'll be surprised if Oklahoma even makes it far in this tournament, if not win at all. So let's get to the bracket now. This is my favorite thing to do in the entire year. I know I've kind of flopped the 2 years I've done this. The first year I did, I was completely wrong. I had Kansas over Kentucky, and that didn't work out. Last year I was kind of half right. I had Kentucky winning it all, but I did say whoever would win between Kentucky and North Carolina in that Elite Eight matchup was going to win the tournament. So in a way, I was kind of half right. So let's start off with the South region. We're going left to right here. So it's going to go South, West, East, and then Midwest. So the South bracket, I've got UAV advancing because all 1 seeds advance. Creighton and Kansas State, that's the 8-9 matchup. And 8-9s are really crapshoots in my opinion. But I think Kansas State's going to win this one. Although it is kind of a toss-up, but I think Kansas State will win that one. Kentucky and Davidson, the 5-12. I'm going with Kentucky. Although it's pretty common to have a 12 seed upset a 5 seed. I think this 5 seed is going to win. I'm going with Kentucky here. Because I think this Kentucky roster is too talented to be eliminated in the first round. Arizona and Buffalo in the 4 versus 13. I'm taking Arizona. Miami and Loyola Chicago. Now, this is one of the matchups that sticks out to me in this first round. I was going to say this at some point in the video, but I'll say this now. Normally, it's the 5-12s that I have my eyes on. But this year, it's the 6-11s. And I think we're going to have the first upset of the tournament in my bracket here. I'm going with Loyola Chicago. I think they might be that Cinderella team this year. This could be that game that ends up being a buzzer beater. And that's how Miami loses. So I got Loyola Chicago winning that one. Tennessee and Wright State in the 3-14. I've got Tennessee. Nevada and Texas. I've got Texas pulling off that upset as the 10th seed. Cincinnati and Georgia State. I've got Cincinnati, but something tells me that Georgia State, they are back in the tournament ever since, because the last time they were in that tournament, they pulled off that upset over Baylor. So that could be something very interesting to keep an eye out on. If a 15th seed can pull off an upset, it's Georgia State, but I don't see it though. I'm going with Cincinnati. But if Georgia State somehow wins, let alone keep it close, I wouldn't be surprised one bit. So that's the first round of the South region. Going to the West, Xavier versus the winner of a play-in game. I'm going with Xavier. Missouri and Florida State, the 8-9s. Again, crapshoots. But I'm going with Florida State. Ohio State and South Dakota State. Now, South Dakota State's going to be a popular choice, pull off an upset here. But I think Ohio State's going to win this one. And I think this could be the type of 5-12 matchup that the 5 has to win, maybe in overtime, if not in the last couple of seconds. I think South Dakota State does keep this game close, but I think Ohio State wins at the very end. Gonzaga over, I'm not sure what UNCG is. It's the ESPN one. When you print it all the way out, it doesn't show the full team, but I've got Gonzaga winning anyways. Houston and San Diego State. I'm going with Houston in this one. Michigan and Montana. I've got the Wolverines. I think Michigan has been really hot lately. I'm taking Michigan to ride the hot hand. Texas A&M and Providence. Now I'm going with Providence here to pull off that 10-7 upset. And now UNC versus Lipscomb. I'm going with UNC. So that is the first round of the West. Now we're going to the East region. Villanova and the winner of the play-in game. I'm going with Villanova. Virginia Tech and Alabama. I'm going with Alabama here. And I think Colin Sexton will single-handedly take over this game. This seems like an ideal game for Colin Sexton. So I'm going with the Tide. West Virginia and Murray State. I'm going with West Virginia. Could Murray State pull off the upset? Maybe, but I think West Virginia does win this one. Maybe not by that much. Wichita State and Marshall. I'm going with Wichita State. Florida and the winner of the play-in game between St. Bonaventure and UCLA. Now, I'm not necessarily sure who's going to win that play-in game, but I think whoever does win this play-in game is going to beat Florida, and here's why. I think after this play-in game, whoever wins it is going to, in a way, they're going to feel like they have a new renowned energy. And I think they might have a significant advantage over Florida. Even though Florida may have rest to work with, the winner of that play-in game, I think, will have a huge advantage, considering that they already know what a tournament game is like, since they've already played one. And they'll have a new renowned energy. I'm going with the winner of that play-in game. Texas Tech and Stephen F. Austin. I'm going with Texas Tech. Arkansas and Butler. This is going to be an interesting one. This could be a game that's also decided by a buzzer beater. But I'm going with Arkansas. Purdue and Cal State Fullerton. I'm going with Purdue. That's the end of the first round for the East. Now on to the Midwest. Kansas versus Penn. I'm going with Kansas. Seton Hall and NC State. I'm going with NC State. Clemson and Mexico State. I'm going with Clemson. Auburn and Charleston. I'm going with Auburn. TCU and the winner of the play-in game between Arizona State and Syracuse. Now, it does seem ideal. Like I just kind of said, the winner of the play-in game will have a new renowned energy. But I think it won't be enough of what someone like St. Bonaventure UCLA will have. So I'm going with TCU. And I'm kind of rooting for TCU in a way because I feel like there were two teams that I feel like would have stood a better chance that I feel like got snubbed. So I'm going with TCU. Michigan State and Bucknell. I'm going with Michigan State here. Rhode Island and Oklahoma. Now, I just got done saying that Oklahoma doesn't look like a tournament team. And if it weren't for Trae Young, Oklahoma was probably a 15-win team at best. So I'm going with Rhode Island here. I felt like Rhode Island, I think they're going to play the chip on their shoulder, knowing how close they were to making the Sweet 16 last year. So I'm going with Rhode Island. Duke and Iona, I'm going with Duke. And that's the end of the round of 64. On to the round of 32. Virginia, Kansas State, I'm going with Virginia to advance. Kentucky and Arizona, I'm going with Arizona. I think that's going to be a close game from start to finish. I think it's going to be a battle, but I got Arizona coming out on top. Loyola Chicago versus Tennessee. I think that Cinderella story ends here. I'm going with Tennessee. Texas and Cincinnati. This is almost kind of like a coin flip to me, but I'm going with Cincinnati. Xavier versus Florida State. I'm going with Xavier. Ohio State versus Gonzaga. I'm going with Gonzaga. Houston and Michigan. I'm taking Michigan to win one more. Riding the hot hand. Providence and North Carolina. I'm going with North Carolina. Villanova and Alabama. I think the career of Colin Sexton ends here. I'm going with Villanova. West Virginia and Wichita State. I'm going with West Virginia. The winner between St. Bonaventure and UCLA. I think that run ends here. I'm going with Texas Tech. And Arkansas and Purdue, the 7 versus 2 matchup. No, I've got some guts, and I'm not afraid to show the guts. I've got Arkansas pulling off the second round upset against Purdue. The reason why I have that is I think Arkansas in this tournament will play the chip on their shoulder because they almost beat the eventual tournament champions, North Carolina. In fact, maybe if a couple different things go differently in that game, Arkansas most likely advances to the Sweet 16 and would have knocked out the eventual national champions of Carolina. So I think Arkansas uses that as fuel in this tournament, and Arkansas makes the Sweet 16 this year. And plus, almost every single year, there is that 2 seed, occasionally maybe even multiple ones, that don't make it past the round of 32. And I think this year's 2 seed that doesn't make it past round of 32 is Purdue. So I've got Arkansas pulling off the upset. Kansas and NC State, I'm going with Kansas. Clemson and Auburn, I'm going with Auburn here. TCU and Michigan State, I've got the Spartans going to the Sweet 16, and Rhode Island and Duke. I had Rhode Island winning 1, but I don't have them winning 2. I got the Blue Devils advancing to the Sweet 16. And now we're at the Sweet 16. Virginia versus Arizona. I think the winner of this game, I like their chances whoever wins it to advance to the Final Four. But I've got Virginia. Although with Virginia, they always tend to find themselves eliminated in the second round. So that kind of worries me a little bit as someone that's picked Virginia to go to the Elite Eight. So we'll see what happens. Tennessee and Cincinnati. This is a kind of a tough one, but I'm going with Cincinnati. Xavier versus Gonzaga. This is a rematch of the Elite Eight matchup from last year. I think Gonzaga wins it again this year, but I think it's much closer than it was last year. Michigan and North Carolina. I think this is the best Sweet 16 matchup that there's going to be. I think this seems like an ideal Sweet 16 matchup that comes down to the wire. And whoever wins this game, maybe you might expect them in the Final Four. But I'm going with UNC. Villanova and West Virginia. I've got Villanova. Although West Virginia was one of my dark horse teams to make the Final Four in the preseason, I think Villanova advances here. Texas Tech and Arkansas. I think the Razorbacks run ends here. I've got Texas Tech advancing to the Elite Eight. Kansas and Auburn. I've got Kansas and Michigan State and Duke. If Michigan and UNC isn't the best Sweet 16 matchup, it might be this one. But I've got Duke winning this Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan State. So now we're at my Elite Eight. So Virginia and Cincinnati advancing to the Final Four. I have the Virginia Cavaliers. I think this is Virginia's year to make the Final Four. If Virginia can make it past the round of 32, and if they can get past whoever could win potentially between the Kentucky or the Arizona, I think will be in the Final Four. So Virginia is my first team in the Final Four. Gonzaga and UNC, a rematch of last year's national championship game. I've got North Carolina winning against Gonzaga again this season. Villanova and Texas Tech. I've got Villanova advancing to the Final Four. And finally, Kansas versus Duke. I've got Duke advancing to the Final Four. So now we're at my Final Four. My Final Four is Virginia, North Carolina, Villanova, and Duke. So I've got 3 ACC teams in the Final Four. Does that worry me a little bit? Kind of. So now we're at the Final Four. Virginia and North Carolina. And advancing to the championship game, I've got Virginia and Villanova and Duke. And the team I have advanced and played Virginia is Villanova. So now we're at my championship game between Virginia and Villanova. I've got 2 1 seeds in the championship, and winning the 2018 NCAA tournament is the Villanova Wildcats. I think the seeding and the records might not show it, but I think Villanova has been the most consistent team in college basketball this year. I think they are the team to beat. Even though they're not the overall number 1 seed, I think they are, and they should be considered the favorites to win the tournament. At least they're my favorite to win the tournament. I'm not sure what Vegas thinks, but my favorite to win the tournament is Villanova, and they are my championship pick. Although there are some things that I want to say real quick. Virginia is either going to get eliminated in the second round or make it all the way to the championship game, and there's really nothing in between. But in this bracket, I've got Virginia advancing the championship game, but ultimately losing to Villanova. And some of the games that stick out to me in this first round, like I said earlier, normally it's the 5 and 12s I've got my eyes on, but this year it's the 6 and 11 matchups. Miami and Loyola Chicago. Florida and the winner between St. Bonaventure and UCLA. TCU versus the playing winner of Arizona State and Syracuse. Those 3 6-11 matchups is what I got my eyes on. That's what I got my eyes on. So thank you for everybody that has tuned in to my tournament video, filling out my 2018 NCAA March Madness bracket. Comment below your Final Four and also who you have winning the tournament. Also, comment who you think your Cinderella team is going to be. And the rules for a Cinderella team is, we're not necessarily going for the mid-major schools, but a Cinderella team to me is a team that is a 4 seed or below. So Arizona could be considered a Cinderella team. Auburn could be considered a Cinderella team. Wichita State can be considered a Cinderella team here. And also, I should have said this in the beginning, but please don't comment what I have, because there are so many people that have waited all year for this. Don't be that person that ruins it for them. It's childish, it's lame, and whoever does it is lame. So enjoy the tournament, like and share the channel, share this with your friends and family. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful night, everyone, or day, depending on whenever you're watching this. And also, I am going to pick a couple of games against the spread. I'm not sure which ones yet. There are a couple ones that stick out to me on Thursday and Friday. So how this is going to work really quickly. For the first round, I'm going to pick 5 Thursday games against the spread and then 5 Friday games against the spread. Then we get to the second round, I'll pick 5 games against the spread in the second round. Then Sweet 16, I'll do about maybe 3 or 4 of them maybe. And then I'll pick against the spread against every other one after that. So once we get to the Elite 8, then I'll pick every game against the spread at that point. So just letting you know ahead of time what's going on. So have a good night or day whenever you're watching this, and enjoy the tournament. And I will see you all throughout this tournament.